Thank you, Anirban, for giving me a very generous introduction and giving me an opportunity to present my book. Let's have a look at the map, and you see this crest of India and the northwest part. This is Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, the territory they grabbed illegally. The one on top is actually what is called northern area. It's like, the head of the lion and then there's a paw jutting down, this purple color, and that is what Pakistan calls Azad Kashmir. Now, we call the entire area POK. They call only the lower part as Azad Kashmir or POK. What is the difference in terminology? Northern area, which is now called Gilgit-Baltistan, which is on top, that is 85% of the territory occupied by Pakistan illegally. While what they call Azad Kashmir is simply a rump of 15%. So, what this brings out, that Pakistan had already absorbed that 85% of the territory illegally occupied by it, and this was done right in the beginning. There are two views about it. One attributes this to Karachi Agreement, which was signed in 1949 between Pakistan's Minister for Kashmir Affairs Nawab Gurmani and Sardar Ibrahim, who was the POK president, and Chaudhry Ghulam Abbas, who was the Muslim Conference chairman. Under this agreement, Azad Kashmir or POK leaders ceded control of northern areas to Pakistan, allegedly. Now, this agreement was kept secret because this was a violation of UN Security Council resolution by Pakistan, because Pakistan had changed the territorial status quo of the area without plebiscite. And not only they did not inform United Nations, they did not inform people of Azad Kashmir themselves. So this remained a secret agreement till 1993, when POK High Court in a historic judgment said that this was a violation of UN Security Council resolution. In so many words, POK High Court said Pakistan has violated UN Security Council resolution by separating northern area from POK and asked for its return to POK or Azad Kashmir. Now, this was a huge slap on Pakistan's face. I'll not go into those details, but I'll show you a slide. Now, since then, this has become the narrative that Pakistan's control on northern area rests on Karachi Agreement. Now, the interesting part is, there are two caveats. Major Brown, who led the revolt by Gilgit scouts in November against Maharaja's rule and placed northern area under Pakistan's control. This was incidentally, he was a British officer. At the time, he was an employee of the Maharaja. So this was an illegal revolt. Now, he has described in his memoirs, which is called coup d'etat, which is a very apt description of what it was. It was not an indigenous uprising. And he has said that after he took over control, he asked the Pakistan government, Gilgit scouts were headquartered in Northwest Frontier Province, he asked NWFP to send a representative to take control of the region. That representative was a man called Muhammad Alam, a Tehsildar, who arrived on 17th November, and Major Brown handed over control of this area to Muhammad Alam. Now, what this narrative tells you, incidentally, Major Brown is highly revered in Pakistan. And after his death, his widow was invited, declared a state guest, and so on. So they cannot question his narrative. What it tells you, this was 17th November. Azad Jammu and Kashmir provisional government had been declared on 24th October. Why wasn't this area handed over to a representative of so-called Azad Jammu and Kashmir government? Why was it given to NWFP government, which was part of Pakistan? So, the inference is that Pakistan actually absorbed this from day one, from November 1947, not the Karachi agreement. There are versions of truth. I remember one of my favorite American actor, and this is a 90s movie, and he is caught red-handed by his second wife with his third girlfriend, and he tries to explain away, that this is not what she thought, and he uses a very delicate phrase, versions of truth, and the second wife retorts, truth is only one. There are no versions of truth, but Pakistan has versions of truth. So this is Karachi agreement is a version of truth. This is the truth that they grabbed it in 47. Now there's another version of truth that Pakistan has, related to Karachi agreement, and that is that it was signed by two leaders of POK, Sardar Ibrahim and Chaudhry Ghulam Abbas. Sardar Ibrahim he was an accidental president. He was a minor functionary of Muslim Conference. Chaudhry Ghulam Abbas was in prison at the time of partition, so this fellow got a chance. He became the president. Now, and he remained president for 4 terms over 50 years period. In between, he was also kicked out and he was arrested and so on. So Sardar Ibrahim in his later years, which is sometime after the change of millennium, he said, मैंने ज़िंदगी में और भी गलतियाँ की हैं, ये गलती नहीं किया. I made other mistakes, but not this one. So he denied ever having signed Karachi agreement. So to begin with, it was a forced document. Now, this version is also supported by Chaudhry Ghulam Abbas, who was the chairman of the Muslim Conference. He said that he didn't deny that he signed, but he said he signed it as a chairman of the party, distancing himself from the territorial issue, ceding the territory to Pakistan. So both the Kashmiri signatories of this Alice document have distanced themselves from this, from so-called Karachi agreement. Now, in 1947, when Pakistan maintained in the United Nations that it had nothing to do with tribal invasion, which took place in October 47. Colonel Akbar Khan, who as a serving officer of Pakistan Army led the tribal invasion under the pseudonym of General Tariq, has recorded in his memoirs, and the memoirs are titled Raiders in Kashmir, again a very apt description. He has recorded that there were at least 4 meetings chaired by Liaquat Ali Khan, Pakistan's Prime Minister, where this tribal invasion was approved. And it was tribal invasion only in name, it was all masterminded and equipped and trained and actually manned by Pakistan Army. Later, Akbar Khan became the military advisor to Liaquat Ali Khan. Now, Yusuf Sarraf, and a very famous name in POK, he was the man who got the Muslim Conference Working Committee had adopted a resolution asking for independent Kashmir under Maharaja. Now, this got overturned by Muhammad Yusuf Sarraf in favor of Pakistan next day. So he's played a major role in favor of Pakistan. He has recorded his conversation with, he has recorded that, no senior Kashmiri leader was present in the deliberations of the Prime Minister or Pakistani leadership when the invasion was decided. So this was again no indigenous uprising. He has also recorded his conversation with Sardar Ibrahim, who said that he declared Azad Kashmir, provisional government, on the basis of 2 calls received from Rawalpindi. One was from Khwaja Naseem, Rawalpindi Commissioner, the other was from Begum Naseem, the then wife of Colonel Akbar Khan, who was leading the military invasion of Kashmir. Why the calls came from Rawalpindi and not Karachi? Karachi was the capital. Because Rawalpindi then as now was the Pakistan Army headquarters, which has played a major role in shaping Pakistan's Kashmir policy. Now we come to a very And India took this issue to UN in January. You know about the UNCIP resolution of August 48, which has three parts: ceasefire, withdrawal of all Pakistani troops, followed by plebiscite. Pakistan never withdrew troops. Plebiscite didn't take place. Now this part is known. Plebiscite, what is not known, there's an impression that India dragged its feet after promising plebiscite. There were only 3 occasions when a formal proposal for plebiscite was made. And on all 3 occasions, India was willing to consider it or had accepted it. Pakistan rejected it. The first one was Mountbatten's visit to Lahore on 2nd November 47. He proposed to Jinnah plebiscite under US auspices. Exactly what became Pakistan's official position and remains Pakistan's official position today. Jinnah refused. Why did he refuse? Because the tribal invasion was going on. The tribals or Pakistan army, they had killed, raped and looted Hindus, Muslims and Christians without discrimination. So Jinnah knew they'd lose the vote. The second occasion arose in 1950. Owen Dixon, he was the UN mediator, came to the subcontinent, proposed regional plebiscite because he said single plebiscite across the entire state will leave pockets of minorities on either side of political divide and lead to forced migration, which was already taking place on a much larger scale all over the subcontinent. So he suggested regional plebiscite, limited the scope to Kashmir Valley because he said in other areas, given the composition of the population, it was clear which way they'll go. Now, this should have been welcomed by Pakistan because if you go by Pakistan's theory that Muslims wanted accession to Pakistan, the percentage of Muslims was highest in the valley, 70%. Owen Dixon in his report to the UN has recorded India was willing to consider it, Pakistan turned it down, and he said Pakistan rejected it on the ground that this was a departure from the principle of single plebiscite. In the same paragraph, Owen Dixon has reported, however, I am given the impression that Pakistan is willing to accept a partition of the state provided it got the valley. So Pakistan was willing to make a departure from the principle of single plebiscite, provided it got the valley and it got the valley without a vote. So single plebiscite was simply an excuse. Now the most telling episode, this was August 1953, Sheikh Abdullah was sacked and arrested. India was supposed to have lost the Abdullah card. Pakistan, sensing India's weakness, proposed bilateral talks. Muhammad Ali Bogra, Prime Minister, came. Bogra-Nehru talks took place, joint communique, both countries agreed to plebiscite. Bogra went back, 1st December 1953, wrote to Nehru, going back on his commitment to plebiscite. Now this was 4 months before Nehru closed the chapter in April 54, saying that the context had changed because Pakistan had changed, joined the military bloc and so on. And this is quoted by people like A.G. Noorani, that because the argument, sounds thin, but actually the plebiscite idea had already been killed by Pakistan 4 months earlier. Now, why was Pakistan repeatedly rejecting plebiscite, which was its official stated demand in the UN and international fora? We have to look into the internal situation. In April 1950, a month before Owen Dixon came to the subcontinent, Pakistan dismissed Sardar Ibrahim, the first president of POK. And that led to Sudan revolt by his tribesmen. It spread to the entire region. First Pakistan, Punjab constabulary, and then Pakistan army was deployed. It lasted almost a decade. In 1955, Muslim Conference, which was a leading political organization of the region, presented a memorandum to Pakistan Constituent Assembly saying that, can you show the next slide? For the last few years, people of Azad Kashmir in general and those of Punj in particular have been subjected to great torture and terrorization. Ruthless and random firing by mortar guns. Now this is heavy caliber guns being used against civilians. Next. And he's described, women have been raped, and in some cases breasts and secret parts have been bitten by police and officers, and teenage boys subjected to unnatural vices. Terrorized by the situation, 3,000 people have gone over to the Indian side of the ceasefire line. Now, this document was presented by Krish Menon in a debate in the UN Security Council in 1957. Pakistani Foreign Minister, who was a very vocal figure, this is Sir Zafrullah Khan, was present, did not challenge the version, so obviously this was true. The document was accepted by UN and circulated as a UN document. And then something very unusual happened. It was classified, which is, completely abnormal, because once a document has been put in public domain, why classify it? It was classified and it disappeared from public memory. I have managed to get it declassified. It is now available on UN website. So, Pakistan has rejected plebiscite, and it rejected plebiscite because in these disturbed conditions, Pakistan was not sure that it will win the vote even in the territory it had occupied illegally. Now, fast forward to 1970, we don't have much time. During all this period, while on the Indian side, elections had been held in 52 and then 57 Constituent Assembly adopted the Constitution. POK was being run on the basis of rules of business. Basically, a joint secretary in Ministry of Kashmir Affairs. And there's an interesting episode that one of the POK presidents came to see this joint secretary. Ministry of Kashmir Affairs was located in Rawalpindi. And a phone call came from Karachi. And the joint secretary told the POK president, "Ki zara aap bahar baith jaiye, please sit outside, because there's a call coming from the capital." So this was the status of how Pakistan, ran the so-called Azad Kashmir. 1970, first elections on the basis of universal franchise took place in POK as well as in Pakistan. There was an earlier election in 64, which was based on very limited franchise, less than 1% of people took part. This was called, basic democrat system. I'll come to that later. Now, in 1971, next year, there is a document, and this, again, this is Ghulam Shah Khan, who was then Cabinet Secretary of Pakistan. He later became President of Pakistan in the 90s, and a very powerful president who dismissed two prime ministers, one PPP, Benazir, and the other Nawaz Sharif. Ghulam Shah Khan, as Cabinet Secretary, issued orders that every ministry in the field of its responsibility should look upon and deal with Azad Kashmir as if it were another administrative unit of the country. So this is a reality of Pakistan's, position. Pakistani version of truth. It's Azad, but it has to be treated as part of Pakistan. Now, 71 war took place that changed the political landscape. 3 developments took place in quick succession. First was the Shimla Agreement. Second was Pakistan got its present constitution. This was the third constitution Pakistan got. It continues. And the third development was POK was given interim POK, Azad Kashmir Interim Constitution Act was adopted in 1974. Now, in the POK constitution, this is a definition of state subject. It says state subject means a person for the time being residing in Azad Jammu and Kashmir or Pakistan, as defined in the late Government of State of J&K notification of 27 as amended from time to time. Now there are 3 caveats. For the time being, it could either be somebody staying in POK or in Pakistan. So it has completely blurred the distinction between the local people and Pakistani nationals. And the third one is notification of 27. This was Maharaja's notification. As amended from time to time, Maharaja's notification was amended only once by him. So amended from time to time, who amended and what was amended. So they have completely demolished the distinction, and this led to the complete change of demographic composition, which in fact had already happened because construction of Mangla Dam led to large-scale displacement of people, Punchis especially, and who are now a major voting bloc. Now, POK constitution next. Okay, we just has an interesting provision that no person or political party in Azad Jammu and Kashmir shall be permitted to, you know, take part in activities prejudicial or detrimental to the ideology of states' accession to Pakistan. So, states' accession to Pakistan is a predetermined conclusion. So, there's nothing left for plebiscite to decide. Now, the most interesting part, constitutions in any country decide or lay down the powers of elected legislature and elected government. POK's constitution describes the powers of Pakistan within POK. There's Article 31, which vested all the legislative and executive powers worth the name in a council headed by Pakistan's Prime Minister. Now, this council was a parallel body which actually rendered the elected legislature useless, and the council included both legislative and executive functions. Now, this was much criticized by people of the area as a rule by proxy, but it continued. Now, there's Article 56 of the POK Constitution, which essentially describes that Pakistan can do as it pleases, regardless of whatever is contained in this document. Now, this was used by General Zia to dismiss Sardar Qayyum, POK president, in 1977. POK assemblies had been persuaded, quote unquote, to commit suicide earlier, that is, dissolve themselves. Now, the third element is Article 33. This is the amendment procedure, which ensures Pakistan's control on POK in perpetuity, because it says that no change can be made in Article 31, which was I mentioned earlier, Article 56, which I have mentioned, and Article 33, which is amendment procedure, without Pakistan's approval. So that means a perpetual logjam is exactly like the Charter, UN Charter amendment procedure, that it's guaranteed to ensure control of the P5 in perpetuity. Now, there is this rule by proxy was much criticized by people of POK. So, in about 40 years later, in 2018, under 13th Amendment of POK Constitution, the council was relegated to advisory role, but its powers were not transferred to elected assembly. The powers of council have now been assumed directly by Pakistan. So Pakistan now exercises direct legislative and executive powers on 32 subjects within POK. And even on the remaining 22 subjects, no legislation can be initiated without Pakistan's approval. Now, this is completely not just hollowing out the autonomy, actually taking over the area from within. And this is such an ingenious scheme. This is not reflected in Pakistan's constitution, unlike Article 370, which was amended, and that attracted criticism of the central government. This is built into control mechanism, was built into the POK constitution right in the beginning by a very clever man called Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and it continues. Now, northern area, I had touched upon it earlier. In 93, after this POK High Court judgment came, it was very embarrassing. So, government created a council, which was an unelected council, basically appointed by Pakistan. In 1999, people of northern areas went to Pakistan Supreme Court, complaining they have no fundamental rights, and Supreme Court gave a historic judgment saying that the fundamental rights should be given to these people and elected assembly installed within a period of 6 months. Now, the Pakistan Supreme Court's judgment was a clear indication that neither of these two, neither fundamental rights nor elected government, representative government, was in place till then. Now, despite this order by Pakistan Supreme Court, it took 2 decades. For 2 decades, nothing happened. Now, incidentally, this Pakistan Supreme Court's order, when did it come? It came in May 1999, when Pakistan was, had entered Kargil. ostensibly to liberate Kashmiris on this side, and this was the treatment they were giving to Kashmiris on their side. Now, in 2009, under Zardari, Gilgit-Baltistan order of 2009 gave them limited powers over 61 subjects. Very limited powers, but these are basically municipal functions. In 2018, that entire list of 61 subjects was abolished under Gilgit-Baltistan order of 2018. Now this led to widespread protests. Copies of the order were torn in the presence of Pakistan's Prime Minister Shah Khaqan Abbasi, and there was a legal challenge. GB Supreme Judicial Court turned aside the GB order of Islamabad of 2018. Pakistan government went in appeal to Pakistan Supreme Court, which sided with Islamabad and restored the order against which the people of Gilgit-Baltistan were protesting. So it is, this is the Pakistan's version of truth, the Azadi as its practice. Now, under Gilgit-Baltistan order of 2018, all the powers are vested in the person of the Prime Minister of Pakistan. This is almost like, the Congo situation before First World War. It was not simply a Belgian colony, it was a personal state of King Leopold. Now, we have already touched on two judgments of Pakistan Supreme Court. The question arises, how can Pakistan Supreme Court give judgments on an area which is not part of Pakistan under Pakistani constitution? So the fudge devised by Pakistan Supreme Court, they invoked human rights. They said human rights are of universal concern, and they use the universal jurisdiction derived from human rights to claim jurisdiction on this territory. But if you look at the order of Pakistan Supreme Court of 2019 January, human rights are nowhere mentioned. Order is very brief, one paragraph: restore Gilgit-Baltistan order of 2018, which was actually a violation of all the human rights. So Pakistan has judiciary, Pakistani laws have been extended. Now the most interesting part, this is the Nationality Act, Pakistan Citizenship Act, was extended to Gilgit-Baltistan and POK as far back as 1972. So people of POK who are not part of Pakistan under Pakistani constitution were made Pakistani citizens, and they were made Pakistani citizens not by their choice but by an act of Pakistani parliament. So now once they have become Pakistani citizens, where is the ground left for any plebiscite? Which means that the area is completely integrated in Pakistan. Now both these changes, the 13th Amendment of POK Constitution and Gilgit-Baltistan Order of 2018, came a year before deletion of Article 370, which was so vehemently criticized by interested parties. But what Pakistan had done earlier, a year before, has gone unnoticed. Now let me touch on last two things. This is the water. The chief resource of POK and Gilgit-Baltistan is water and connectivity. Mangla Dam was constructed in 1967. For 36 years, POK didn't get any payment either for water usage charges or hydropower royalty. When the payments began, they were given 15 paisa per unit as water usage charge. Pakistan's provinces like Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, for the same molecule of water, they get 1 rupee 10 paisa, 7 times higher. And the distinction is justified on the ground that this is hydropower royalty. Now, if it is hydropower royalty, why can't you give it to people of POK? Then the argument is given that under Article 161 of Pakistan's constitution, hydropower royalty can only be given to Pakistan's provinces, and POK is not our province because we are, good citizens of the world. We are awaiting plebiscite under UN resolutions. Now, this is a very funny argument because when it came to making use of their resources, the POK's distinct status did not come in the way. POK's distinct status was raised only when it came to paying for it. And since the dam was constructed 6 years before Pakistan's present constitution was enacted. So there was enough time to actually make a provision for it. If there was an inadvertent mistake, it could have been amended later. There have been 26 amendments, except this, which has remained a constant. Now the last part, which is the CPEC. China had been brought into Kashmir by Pakistan sometime in 1963. CPEC was announced in 2013. And next, now under CPEC, the bulk, bulk of Pakistani, bulk of in Chinese investment under CPEC is being invested not in Gwadar, which is in public media. Gwadar has got only $700 million. But almost $16 billion have been committed to POK and Gilgit-Baltistan, and the larger part in Gilgit-Baltistan. Now, this means that Chinese presence will be strengthened on India's western flank, and I think General Atta Hassan will be able to better, describe this, what is strategic implications. So I'll stop here. Thank you. And there is, of course, one slide which got left out. Shimla Agreement. Pakistan and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto replying to debate on Shimla Agreement in Pakistan National Assembly admitted that UN resolutions did not support Pakistan's position. What he was, the sentence I quoted, he was referring to the fact that the UN resolutions had asked Pakistan to withdraw all its troops, while India was asked only to withdraw bulk of its troops. Now, this was a recognition by the UN that India had a de-jure position and Pakistan had none. So he was referring to that was the day you jeopardized the right of self-determination. And this was not a one-off statement, he repeated it 15 days later in Karachi. It's contemporary relevance because Pakistan, after Shimla Agreement, erected this theory that Shimla Agreement does not override UN resolutions or UN Charter. So those resolutions remain valid. Now, even if you concede those resolutions remain valid, here was a Pakistan's president saying that those resolutions don't support Pakistan's position. And this was repeated by his worthy daughters of Benazir Bhutto in '94 in an interview to New York Times, in which she said she ruled out any referendum because she said referendum, in case of referendum, Hindu votes and Hindu Sikhs and Buddhists will vote for India. She forgot to mention that many of the Muslims will also vote for India. But she said the Muslim vote will get fractured. Some will vote for Pakistan, some will vote for independence. So she said the outcome will remain unchanged territorially. Now this was the admission that they will lose the vote because if Pakistan wins the vote, there will be a territorial change. Thank you.